Edmund Kemper had sex with the severed heads of the teenage girls he murdered. Sex with their heads. And as if that wasn't bad enough, he did the same thing with the head of his dead mother. Got your attention? Good. Let's jump straight in.
The following episode contains disturbing material that might be inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
On the 27th of August 1964, 15-year-old Edmund Kemper III sat down at the kitchen table with his grandmother and started eating the meal she had prepared for him. They sat in silence, as usual, with only the sound coming from scraping of the cutlery across his plate. She was a cruel woman, abusive and controlling, the matriarch of the family. She watched him intently as he ate each mouthful, quietly analysing what food was left on the plate. Kemper was getting full and began pushing parts of the food to one side. Enraged by this, she demanded he finish everything on his plate. Shouting at him, she stood up and stormed over to the cooker, returning with a pot of food. Slopping it on his plate, she demanded he eat the rest, complaining that he was an ungrateful and pathetic and that she hated having to look after him. Forcing down the last of the food, Kemper calmly stood to his feet and left the room. This humiliation, this cruelty was the final straw, and something snapped in Kemper. But before I reveal just how disturbing this twisted tale gets, if this sounds like something you'll enjoy, then smash that subscribe button, because we try to release stories just like this one at least once a week. Now, where were we? Opening his grandfather's prized gun cupboard, he pulled out a rifle and made his way back to the kitchen. His grandmother was at the sink, banging the plate, still angry, still calling him names. And with her back to Kemper, he slowly raised the gun, pulled the trigger. She was dead. Without remorse, he slowly walked outside and sat with a gun on the doorstep of the family ranch. It wasn't long before the faint rumble of his grandfather's car could be heard in the distance. He was back from the store. Kemper stood up and walked towards the car, rifle by his side. Reaching the car, and without any words, he once again raised the gun. And for a second he stood poised, gun pointing at his grandfather. Confused by his actions, his grandfather stepped out of the car. But before anything could be said, he too was shot dead. With two members of his family violently murdered, Kemper re-entered the house and first called his mother to tell her what he had just done. Then he called the police. He was arrested shortly after, and when questioned why, he said, and I quote, "I just wanted to see what it felt like to kill Grandma. And as for murdering his grandfather, that was just to save him from finding out his wife was dead." In 1964, court psychiatrists diagnosed him as a paranoid schizophrenic, and only after 6 years, aged just 21, he was released on parole and into the care of his mother, Clarnell. And you would have thought, now that he was a free man, he would be changed and start his life over. But no, things were about to get much worse after he picked up 2 teenage hitchhikers. Edmund Kemper III was born in California on the 18th of December 1948. He was middle of 3 children, but the only son born of Clarnell and Edmund Kemper Jr. After the war, his father, Edmund Jr., worked as an electrician and later stated that suicide missions during the war were nothing compared to living with his wife. Edmund had a close relationship with his father, but after his parents divorced in 1957, he ended up being raised by his mother. Kemper started exhibiting antisocial behaviour early on, including torturing insects and cruelty to animals, but his sadistic nature got really bad at age 10 when he buried his cat alive. and after waiting long enough to know if the poor innocent animal was dead, he dug it up, cut off its head, and mounted it on a spike. Kemper also recalled that he would sneak out in the night armed with his father's bayonet and go to his teacher's house and watch her through her windows. And one of his favourite games to play was the electric chair, where he asked his younger sister to tie him up and flip an imaginary switch, after which he would pretend that he was being executed by electric shock. His mother, Clarnell, was a neurotic, domineering alcoholic who would take great pleasure in belittling him. Paranoid that her son would harm his sisters, he would also be locked in the basement, in the dark, surrounded by rats. She would mock him because of his size, standing at 6'4" at just 14. She called him a real weirdo. Never shown any affection because she thought it would turn him gay, he was also told no woman would ever love him. So, after years of constant abuse at the hands of his evil mother, he made a decision. In an attempt to escape the torment of living with his mother, Kemper tried to reconcile his relationship with his father, but he had remarried and had a new family, one that didn't appreciate the new addition to theirs. Kemper did, however, stay with them for a short while, but after scaring his stepmother and his father being at a loss with what to do with his unruly son, he was sent to his grandparents, who offered to straighten him out. Kemper hated living with his grandparents, and as we heard earlier, he made an evil decision to murder them both in cold blood. And after being incarcerated for the crime, Kemper became a model prisoner. He was observed as being highly intelligent and with a very impressive IQ. He even got trained to give psychiatric tests to other inmates, admitting that he learned a lot from the sex offenders to whom he administered the test. On the 18th of December 1969, on his 21st birthday, and with his impeccable record and his ability to fool the experts, Kemper was released back into the community, just 6 years later, back into the care of his mother. Kemper worked a series of menial jobs until finally getting a position at the California Department of Transport. After earning enough money, he was finally able to leave the house he shared with his mother. But with continued phone calls and surprise visits, he still couldn't escape her vile influence. So to be able to stay away from the house, Kemper bought himself a large car and started driving around the area. He had noticed a large number of young women hitchhiking, so he started offering them lifts. According to Kemper, he picked up around 150 young girls before he started feeling homicidal, sexual urges. But that day eventually came. It was a bright and sunny day on the 7th of May 1972. The roads were busy as students were off on road trips to other universities. Many teenagers couldn't afford their own vehicles, so happily thumbed for a lift from any car going their way. For two 18-year-old hitchhiking students, Marianne Pesch and Anita Luquesa, today they would be taken to their final destination. Jumping into the car, the excited young girls laughed and joked with their knight in shining armour. They relaxed. Kemper was charming, helpful, and they felt safe. And after driving for an hour, they reached a secluded, wooded area, unbeknown to his innocent victims, miles away from where they thought they were going. Parking up, away from any passers-by, Kemper pulled out a gun. Frozen in fear, Marianne was handcuffed to the seat, and pointing a gun at Anita, he forced her around the back of the car. Crying and begging to be let go, Kemper pushed her into the trunk and locked it. Marianne watched in shock as the giant of a man calmly climbed back into the front, and after grabbing a knife from under the seat, started stabbing her. The sounds of her best friend struggling and screaming would have been heard in the darkness of the trunk, and Anita, in floods of tears, could have done nothing about it. But then came the silence, followed by the footsteps. Rays of sunlight poured into the trunk as Kemper released the lock, blinding Anita for a moment, but not before she saw the blood-stained knife just as he thrust it deep into her body. With both girls dead, Kemper returned to his apartment with the lifeless bodies in the trunk. Carefully carrying the girls inside and placing them on the floor, he undressed them both, took photographs, and had sex with their cold, naked torsos. Now, with the need to get rid of the corpses, he dismembered each girl and placed their body parts into plastic bags, disposing them in a nearby mountain range. And in one final perverse and gruesome act, before throwing the severed heads of his beautiful, innocent young girls into the ravine, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Kemper had oral sex with their heads. Just 4 months later, the urge for relief from Kemper's raging dark side reared its ugly head once again. Aku was a 15-year-old dance student, and after missing her bus after a dance class on the 14th of September 1972, she decided to hitchhike. Crawling the streets like a predatory beast nearby, Kemper pulled up alongside in his car and wound down the passenger window. This calm, gentle giant in a soft, convincing voice offered her a lift. With no bus on the way and being swayed by the charm of Kemper, she willingly jumped in. With a pre-planned route and secluded place found, the car pulled to a stop. Confused and concerned, Aku started to question what was going on, but after reassurance from Kemper, he stepped outside the car to get something from the trunk. Still worried, Aku instinctively locked the driver's door behind him. Turning back, Kemper tried the door, tugging on it to regain access as Aku then locked the passenger side. She was safe, at least for the moment. Fighting the urge to start shouting and attacking the car door, Kemper kept his cool, and in a calm, controlling voice he started to reassure Aku. She wouldn't listen to him to start with, screaming at him through her tears to go away. But he kept going, and after an hour's softly spoken reassurance, he finally convinced her to unlock the door. With a simple click, this devil in the guise of a caring man then took away that promise and choked her unconscious before raping and finally killing her. And it pains me to know that all the while she was trapped, while her fears were being ebbed away, the keys were still inside the car. If she'd only looked closer, there was a loaded gun under the seat. After taking her back to his apartment, he later revealed that he opened the trunk and admired his catch like a fisherman before once again having sex with the corpse, dismembering and disposing of her remains like a worthless piece of trash. Kemper was to go on and murder 3 more innocent young girls: Cindy Shaw, Rosalind Thorpe, and Alison Liu. But time was running out for Kemper, not because the police were getting closer, but because he was finally going to have closure on the rage that was consuming him from within. On the 20th of April 1973, coming home late from a party, the drunken 52-year-old Clarnell woke her son by stumbling around on her arrival. After getting into bed and starting to read a book, she noticed Kemper entering her room. In her usual uncaring voice, she said, "I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now." Kemper calmly replied, "No, good night." Waiting until she was asleep, he went back into her room, armed with a claw hammer. Slowly creeping over to her bed, he watched intently as she stirred in her sleep due to the effects of the excessive alcohol. Raising the hammer high above his head, and with one decisive swing, he hit her square on the head. For a moment there was calm, but it was followed abruptly by a deathly moan as her body tried to recover from the impact. Instinctively grabbing a penknife from his pocket, Kemper dragged the sharpened blade deep across his mother's throat, releasing a torrent of blood gushing out over the bed sheets. With her life draining away, Kemper held her body to the bed and stared into the eyes as the ability to struggle faded away and death took her into darkness. And you would have thought this violent retribution would have been enough for Kemper. But no, it wasn't enough. In a final twisted and gruesome act, he cut off her head and placed it on the side of the bed. Gazing at the blood-stained, decapitated head of his mother, he unzipped his trousers and had oral sex with his mother's lifeless head. But the punishment still wasn't over. In an attempt to release all of his dark emotions he had towards his abusive mother, he placed her head on a shelf, screamed at it for over an hour, and he also used it as a dartboard. And finally, he cut out her tongue and larynx, placed them in a garbage disposal unit, with Kemper later saying that seemed appropriate, as much as she bitched and screamed and yelled at me over so many years. After he hid the corpse in a wardrobe, he visited a bar for a drink, and on his return invited his mother's best friend, Sarah Hallett, over. When she arrived, he strangled her to death, only to create a cover story that her and his mother had gone away together on holiday. Kemper fled the scene and drove thousands of miles. He carried guns and hundreds of rounds of ammunition, believing he was now target of a manhunt. But after not hearing any news on the radio about the death of his mother and friend, he called the police and confessed to the killings. Upon his capture, he also confessed to the murder of 6 students. And when asked why he turned himself in, he simply said, the original purpose was gone. On the 8th of November 1973, Kemper was convicted of 8 counts of first-degree murder and received 7 years to life for each count to be served concurrently. He asked for the death penalty and requested death by torture, but was refused. Since 1979, he's been eligible for parole, but has been denied it every time, with even Kemper himself admitting society is not ready in any shape or form for me, and I have to agree with him. Kemper stirs a time-old question of nature versus nurture. Was Kemper born to kill, or was he simply a victim of his own abusive upbringing? For whatever reason, Edmund Kemper III will die in prison, but I can't help but wonder, does that feel enough for the families of the victims? This abused, dysfunctional, broken child grew to become an evil monster, and monsters need to be seen. This is how they draw their power and feel validated. Kemper will never see the light of day again. He is now invisible, which itself is torture for such a monster. Hey everyone, thanks for watching our Twisted Tale Ed Kemper, the calm co-ed killer. If it's something you enjoyed, then please smash that like button and consider sharing it. And if you really like what we do, then please subscribe. It will really help us out. Good night everyone, and keep safe.